שנכנס אדר מי שנכנס אדר מי שנכנס אדר מרבים בשמחה מי שנכנס אדר מרבים בשמחה שושנת יעקב צהלה ושמחה לראותם יחד תכלת מרדכי תנועתם הייתה לנצח ותקוותם בכל דור ודור ברוך מרדכי היהודי ברוך מרדכי היהודי
Hello everyone and Chag Purim Sameach. Welcome to Torah L'chaim with me, your host, Rabbi Anibal. It's great to have you here. I hope more people are going to join today. This is a very special class for me, when we are going to talk not necessarily about Purim, but about some of the Midrashim about Purim, which is also very interesting. Some of the stories that have been around in the rabbinic tradition that will bring more meaning and more sense to this beautiful holiday. And because this is the thing, Purim is one of these holidays that we have to try to understand why we celebrate it, since it's based on the book of Esther, and the book of Esther, at the time of the canonization of the Bible, almost didn't make the cut. You know that? There was a debate if the book of Esther should be incorporated into the biblical canon or not. And then it was voted, and they decided, yes, I think my hat is inside out. Yes, it is. There. Better. A little bit better there. And see Sam Bailey. Shalom. And Chag Sameach. Welcome. Welcome. So yeah, almost didn't make the cut. But then the rabbis defended the book of Esther, saying that even though it doesn't contain the name of God, it still contains lots of meaning and even some prophecy, as we are hopefully going to see today. Even some prophecy. So, without further ado, I will suggest that we should start digging into this beautiful Midrashim. The first thing I want to bring for you is the first verse of the book of Esther. Okay? It goes like this. Vayahi b'mei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh amolech me'odu v'yadkush sheva v'esrim u'mea medina. It happens in the day of Ahasuerus. We call it Achashverosh in Hebrew. Let's use that name, Achashverosh, who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Nubia. Okay, so the first thing that the rabbis are talking about this specific text is who in this world is Achashverosh? They're trying to realize which one of the known kings from Persia was Achashverosh, and there are different theories. Axtertes, and I can't remember the other names that they use, but none of them is Achashverosh. There is no such a thing of a Persian king called Achashverosh, a real one. So we have a situation here that the name used in the Megillah is an alias. It's not a real name. It's a nickname. So the question is, why will the rabbis use a nickname for the king and not his real name, so we know exactly which Persian king we are talking about? It wouldn't be that difficult. The Torah does that kind of things in other parts, the Bible, in other parts, so why don't you use the historical name for the Megillah? And the rabbis say that they purposely choose the name Achashverosh as a nickname for the king because it contains hints about Achashverosh's character. The problem is we are not 100% sure of the meaning of the word Achashverosh. Remember back in the day when this was written, the Jews used to speak sometimes a blend between Hebrew and Aramaic. So who knows the exact root of this name? So different rabbis provided different explanations of what do they think, these rabbis, what do they think Achashverosh means as a nickname. Okay? But again, have in mind that Achashverosh is not the real name because there is no such a thing of a real king Achashverosh. There are accounts of kings of Persia who may have been this Achashverosh, but we are not exactly 100% sure who he is. But let's try to unlock and to discover the essence of King Achashverosh. Let's start with the first Midrash. We have Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, and he said, he was called Achashverosh because he blackened the faces of Israel like the bottom of a cooking pot. How so? Well, this rabbi will say, by rearranging the letters of the name Achashverosh, we can spell Shachor, black, and Esh, fire. The name is seen as alluding to something that has blackened by fire, like the bottom of a pot. The expression "he blackened their faces" means that he caused them great anguish, and refers to the fact that Ahasuerus first rescinded the permission given by Cyrus to rebuild the Holy Temple, and to his giving approval to Haman's decree that sought to eradicate the Jewish people. As you can see, right out of the bat, you can tell that Ahasuerus is not a nice name. The nickname chosen to refer to this king is not for a good reason. Okay, I want to share with you other theories with other rabbis. None of them, for that they can agree that none of the nicknames have nothing to do with something good about Ahasuerus. So this one, Ahasuerus, is actually an anagram of he blackened the faces with fires. In other words, can you imagine? Try to imagine a ruined pot, something that is unusable, and the anguish and everything. So this is theory number one of what Ahasuerus means. Let's go to theory number two. This is Rab Berachaya. And by the way, all these Midrashim, hi Reuven, Rosh theory. There are many theories about Rosh, not only one. I'm presenting all this, by the way, this is from the Midrash Rabbah on the book of Esther. Okay, Rabbi Berachaya said he was called Ahasuerus because he weakened the heads, Rosh, with fasting. According to this interpretation, the name Ahasuerus is taken as the combination of the word kechash, Rosh. He weakened the head. Alternatively, it is a combination of the word chash berosh. He felt ill in the head. In either event, Rabbi Berachaya is saying that Ahasuerus may cause the Jews to feel weak by starving them. So in other words, because you may remember at the very beginning that everybody's eating and drinking, but it looks like not the Jews. But the Jews was something else. Hello, Andrea. Welcome to the class. Okay, it's two different theories by Rabbi Berachaya. Number one, kechash rosh, he weakened the head. Theory number two, chash berosh, he felt ill in the head. Okay? Alternatively, he also explains, Ahasuerus is a combination of the word woe, sometimes in that sense, and rosh, head, alluding to the fact that everyone who recalled Ahasuerus said, woe upon my head, or woe upon his head. Because remember, hi Shelley, welcome. Remember also that Ahasuerus was a drunk. And it may be, it says the entire population was invited to feast, but who knows, maybe the Jews weren't invited. We don't necessarily know when the Megillah says that everybody was to feast, that actually 100% everybody. We don't know. Hello, Sarah Bloomberg. Welcome. Okay, so but this is interesting because this he weakened the head or felt ill in the head or woe upon the head. It could be talking about the Jews or could be talking about Ahasuerus in the sense that because of his drinking, he was in a constant state of drunkenness. Is that the thing? Is that a word? So maybe in other words, he was drunk all the time because instead of drinking water, he was drinking wine. And maybe that's what it is. It's basically that his head wasn't actually working at 100%. And that's what the name Ahasuerus could mean. And that's the one that I personally like, that maybe that's why the rabbis use this name, Ahasuerus, in the sense that, it's almost like saying, which king I'm talking about, the drunk one, the one that he couldn't even think properly because of all the alcohol, of his permanent state of intoxication. And remember, everything that he does, and pay attention during the reading of the Megillah, is never his decision. He either asks his ministers or Haman, or Esther, or eventually Mordecai. But it's never his decision. The guy cannot think by himself. Think about that. So maybe this is a very interesting one. Hello, Karen Farkas. You said, why did Mordecai... Let me... You're asking, why did Mordecai want Esther to become queen before he knew of the proclamation against the Jews? That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. So, we don't really know, but I guess at the end of the day, it's always good to have somebody in the court, because you never know. Especially, as I mentioned before, if we have the suspicion that the Jews were already discriminated in that kingdom. So if you're already discriminated and you have the opportunity to have an inside person, why not? Mordecai probably realized, hey, she's pretty. She has a chance. Let's do it. Esther, will you do it? And Esther said, okay, I'll do it. That could be. Okay? So this is another theory. But yes, there is more. Midrash Rabbah presents a whole list of why we call Achashverosh. Let's go with the next one. Now it's Rabbi Levi, and he said he was called Achashverosh because he gave Israel gall and wormwood to drink, meaning a strong feeling of bitterness and resentment. Right? Yeah, there is an idiom. There is, there is an idiom in English, gall and wormwood. There's something that makes you sick to your stomach. Okay? So Rabbi Levi interprets the name Achashverosh as a combination of the words Hishka, Rosh. He gave gall to drink. Although here, the head of Achashverosh is interchanged with a hey, but hey, it's a midrash, right? So we take that liberty. So in other words, again, not a positive thing to say about Achashverosh. We call him the one, bitter like gall. We have combinations of idioms about that. So, but in this sense, it's something that makes you thick, makes you sick to your stomach. That was Achashverosh. He was so bad. He was so terrible as a leader that he made people sick of their stomach. Karen Farkas, you say again. You say, but the king wanted Mordecai to be honored for saving him, the king, even though he knew he was a Jew. But the guy, Achashverosh himself again, I'm not really sure if he was a bad person personally. He was just like a nothing. Somebody who, even though he might be a good person, he has such bad advice, and the fact that he was following this advice. Remember, when he got rid of Vashti, and immediately after, the Megillah says that he actually regretted what he did, and I'm pretty sure that his minister freaked out when the king said, what have I done? Why did I do that? And then they probably said, hey, you were drunk. Remember? No, I don't. All I know is I want my queen back. Well, that's not possible. She is permanently gone. And then they have to create all this scheme to get him another queen. So Achashverosh is a very interesting character. Very interesting. Let's continue. Wormwood is also mentioned in the Torah. Nibiru planet. I can't remember. I don't remember that about that. But let's continue with the next one. There is more. Then we have Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon, and he said he was called Achashverosh because he wished to destroy the root of Israel. You see, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon, he doesn't think too kindly of Achashverosh as a person. Okay, but the rabbis are divided from the one that they do think that he was a bad person to the one that they think that he was like a neutral person, that everybody was influencing him. If you were a little bit good talking to people, you will get your way with the king, right? Shelley, that's true. Wormwood is poisonous. Yes. Okay, he wished to destroy Israel. Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon interprets the name Achashverosh as a combination of the word ach, as in the sense of destruction by burning, and rash, which is short for horish, drove away. Accordingly, Ahasuerus was called by this name. He thought to drive away and destroy the Jewish people through his support of Haman's evil decrees. Another interpretation is Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon interprets the name Ahasuerus as related of the word shoresh, root. Shoresh. So destroying by burning the shoresh, the root, the essence. So in other words, Ahasuerus didn't really want to destroy physically the Jewish people. He tried to assimilate them. That's a different interpretation by Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon. And then from there to accepting Haman's plot, they're very close together. Very close together. So maybe that's why he didn't hesitate to do what Haman asked him to do, because he already have a kind of a similar idea. Okay? So let's continue with the next one. Rabbi Tachlifa ben Barchana said, he was called Ahasuerus because he was the brother, Now, in the sense of brother. It's the same Hebrew we use same word we use in modern Hebrew. Brother, right? Berosh, and in the sense, the brother of the head. The brother of the head. So he was called Ahasuerus because he was the brother of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who was called a head of gold in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 38. But this is the Midrash continuum. The Midrash is asking now, but was he actually his brother? Come on! Nebuchadnezzar was a Chaldean and Ahasuerus was a Mede. They didn't live in the same place. Rather, since Ahasuerus halted the reconstruction of the Holy Temple and Nebuchadnezzar actually destroyed it, therefore Scripture equates them. This is another thing, part of the Midrash, that said that Ahasuerus was the king who stopped. It looks like the previous king of Persia allowed the Jews to go back and start the reconstruction of the Holy Temple. When Ahasuerus became a king, he stopped that plan immediately. Maybe somebody convinced him that that's what he should do. I don't know. But he stopped it. So that's why Ahasuerus, the brother of the head of the head, the brother of Nebuchadnezzar, in the sense that he was like him. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple. Ahasuerus actually didn't physically destroy it, but by stopping the reconstruction, it's like destroying it again. So it could be the as brother. So thus is written in Proverbs 18:9, one who grows lax in his work is also a brother to the master of destruction. So it could be based on scripture. The name Ahasuerus as brother of the head, as brother of Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? Sarah Bloomberg, you say, I have a question. Is there any historical evidence that suggests this story really happened? Like this, not really. Unless we can find the book of Chronicles mentioned in the book of Esther, which was never actually physically found. But we do know in general about all the challenges that the Jews had in Persia. So, but the story exactly as presented by the Megillah, no, we don't have a fact. And this is what happened with most of the books of the Bible. We don't take them as factual, but we take them as truth. It's not the same. Book of Esther may not be factual, but the teachings are truth. Process that for a little bit. Okay? So these are a few theories of the word Ahasuerus. Okay? But now there is another midrash that I wanted to share with you. That where is this coming from? Let me double check. This is coming from Pesikta Rabbati, which is another midrash, and it says that after Ahasuerus died, he eventually was reincarnated. Many of the things presented in this book was analyzed from the masters of Kabbalah as a proof to reincarnation. For example, let me give you a quick picture here. They will say that Mordecai was the reincarnation of King Saul. I thought about that 2 weeks ago when we studied Purim. So if you want to review that, you can go back to the YouTube or Facebook archive from Shari Zedek and check my Torah Lechaim on Purim, and I presented that Midrash, saying that Mordechai was the reincarnation of King Saul, while Haman was the reincarnation of King Agag. Remember that Saul and Agag, they fought. Saul prevailed, and God said, kill Agag, and he failed. Saul failed fulfilling the word of God of killing Agag. So you have to understand the concept on Kabbalah of tikkun hanefesh, the correction of the soul, which means that if there is something that you're supposed to do in this world, but you fail, through reincarnation, you have another chance in the future. So Mordechai came to correct the soul of Saul. Okay? So in other words, Mordechai was born with the neshama, with the soul of King Saul. Understood? And Haman was born with the neshama, with the soul of King Agag. So now the two of them are going to fight again in that generation. But then the rabbi said once Ahasuerus died, he needed to have a correction because he was terrible. Because as I mentioned before, maybe he was a good person, but he allowed himself to be influenced by other people, and he didn't really do anything out of free will. So according to the next Midrash that I'm going to present to you, he was giving another choice as a soul, as a human being, to see if in a different generation he will be able to do it better. Okay? And I find it fascinating, and that's why I'm presenting it to you. That's why I call this class my favorite Midrashim of Purim. So let me present this Midrash. And it says, a Jewish farmer who fell on hard times sold the cow that he had used to pull his plow. The animal was purchased by a non-Jew who immediately put the cow to work. A Jewish... why do I have it twice? Hold on. I had to edit it. Okay. The cow plowed his field competently throughout the week until Shabbat. Okay? On Shabbat, the cow crouched down under and refused to move. He would not pull the plow. The owner whipped the cow in an effort to compel it to get up and work. But his efforts were to no avail. The cow remained stationary. The farmer went to the Jew who had sold him the cow and expressed his frustration at his inability to get the cow to budge. Despite coaxing and whipping it, the cow, he figured, must be ill, and therefore, I want you to return the animal to you, and I want a full refund. Can you imagine? We just said that, the farmer, he needed the money, so he couldn't give him the refund. So what happened? The former owner, the Jew, knew there was nothing wrong with the animal. The cow had become accustomed to not working on Shabbat, and he didn't understand that its new non-Jewish owner was permitted to work on Shabbat. The Jewish farmer advised the new owner that there was no need to return the cow. He was confident that he would be able to convince the cow to pull the plow. He approached the cow, bent down to whisper in its ears. Cow, you know that as long as you were in my possession, you worked 6 days a week and rested on Shabbat. However, I had to sell you, and your new owner is not Jewish. Please stand up and pull his plow. You are no longer required to rest on Shabbat. Believe it or not, the cow immediately rose and began to pull the plow. The non-Jew was shocked. He had beaten the cow, yet despite all his efforts, the cow had refused to move. Yet, the Jew had simply whispered into the animal's ear, and suddenly it was ready to work. He expressed incredulity at what he witnessed, and he asked the Jew for an explanation. What was it you whispered to the cow? The Jew reassured him that he had not employed any witchcraft or sorcery. He proceeded to relate precisely what he had told the cow. It's exactly what I just read for you guys. When the farmer heard that the cow had not wanted to work in observance of Shabbat, he was profoundly moved. This cow, who was unable to speak and had an intellect far inferior to that of a human being, was able to recognize its creator and observe the day of rest mandated by God. How could he, a human with vastly superior intelligence, with an ability to reason and think, who was created in the image of God, not conduct himself according to the wishes of God? How could he not realize that God's commandments have to be followed when a simple cow was able to recognize it? The farmer was so deeply affected that he subsequently converted to Judaism. That's the Midrash. And you can already imagine where this is going, right? The farmer who purchased the cow, who ultimately converted to Judaism as a result of what he witnessed with the cow, was a reincarnation of Ahasuerus. Here you go. His neshama, his soul, achieved the level of atonement when he came back to this world as a non-Jew who ultimately converted to Judaism. After his conversion, he studied and mastered the Torah. His stature grew among his contemporaries, and he eventually was able to achieve the level of a Tana. Tanaim were the one who wrote the Mishnah, guys. He became known as Rabbi Yochanan ben Torsa. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan, the son of the cow. He was called thus because his conversion had been precipitated by the events surrounding the cow that he had purchased. Until this very day, we relate Divrei Torah in his name. This is very interesting. So here we have another example of Megillat Esther related to the topic of reincarnation. And it's a lot of this in the kind of studies that we do around the Megillah. Okay? So, and there are lots of comments about this story and about this specific Midrash. So let me present to you one more. This Rabbi Daniel Gladstein, he's a contemporary rabbi. He's talking about the Midrash. He said, upon further reflection regarding the story brought in the Pesikta, in the Midrash, we are impressed by one of the messages contained therein. Even a cow can influence someone to come closer to God. The Pesikta adds that it should not be surprising that a cow could bring a person under the wings of the Shekhinah. After all, as we read in the Torah, this is the decree of the Torah. A single red cow can provide purity to all the people of Israel. You know that? This is the story of the Para Aduma, red heifer. I put cow there so it will sound similar to the Midrash. But the Torah specifically is talking about that the ultimate purification of the Jewish people comes through a red heifer, red cow. But the rabbis here are making the connection with the personification of the cow as a symbol of the ultimate purification. So the Torah says that there are certain kind of impurities that you can eliminate by water, so for example, by the mikvah, or some other impurities that you don't even have to the mikvah. It just take time. After 24 hours, for example, you are not impure anymore, and so forth. Some other impurities by sacrifices. But there were certain kinds of impurities that no matter what you do, you will never be able to get rid of them. Yes, Karen, I remember red heifer. Yes, you found it. You found it in North America. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Shelly Chochino said, one white hair and it's not pure. Yeah, but you get the point. Here, they said that how is it possible that a cow can make you pure? It doesn't really make sense. But now the rabbis take the concept of a cow and they built a midrash, connecting it to Ahasuerus. But eventually this rabbi explained, okay, guys, look at the big picture. Take it as a symbolism. Take it as an allegory here, right? The fact is that at the end of the day, a single cow can make you pure. In the sense that, and sometimes an animal can influence you to come closer to God. And sometimes it's not even about the animal, it's about what happens to you. Because remember, this is what happened to this farmer. What he has to go through in life eventually make him think. He reflected and he changed his behavior. How many times do we do that? I believe that sometimes we go through certain things in life, we don't even pay attention to that. And sometimes it's an opportunity for us to reflect and change. But we miss the boat, right? We miss the boat. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of forgot. That's why they are tweezers. When nobody looks, you know, you just pull the white hair. Me? No, I didn't do anything. It's like the old joke, right? For Hanukkah. How is it possible that the Hanukkah was burning for 8 days? Well, you know, at night when nobody was looking, the janitor was adding oil to the menorah. This is actually a joke that one of the janitors at Shaarei Tzedek told me. And I found it very funny that the guy who's not Jewish knew the story of Hanukkah and everything about the oil and everything. So he came out with that joke. That the secret of Hanukkah is that the janitor were secretly adding, you know, non-kosher oil at night, so the rabbis will think that there was a miracle. Okay, so this connection with the red cow actually has even more, because there is another rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Wolfson, that said the gematria. You know what is gematria? The numerology of the opening words of Parashat Parah. It says Zot Chukat. That's the beginning, the two words at the beginning of the episode of the red cow in the Torah, Zot Chukat. The gematria, the numerology is 916, identical to the gematria of Hamelech Achashverosh, King Achashverosh. And that's the connection. Shelley Chochin, nope, it was not Larry, it was Gary. Who unfortunately he passed away recently. Yeah, Gary was the one. He was a funny guy, actually. Very funny guy. Yeah. So there is another thing that I wanted to talk about Achashverosh, and it's what he represents. The rabbi said that at the end of the day, every character represents something else, and Achashverosh is the representation of physical life. How do we know that? Well, look, go read the Megillah. The way he lives. He eats all day, he drinks all day, he has many women. He doesn't like when he gets rid of this wife, he takes another wife. Everything is about the body. Everything is about indulging himself. There is no spirituality in the life of Achashverosh. That's why he needed the rectification of becoming a rabbi, which is all about spirituality and study. Okay? But in the Megillah, he's all the opposite. Achashverosh is it's the pure representation of the material world. And we all know that the material world is only half of the reality. The other half of the reality is spirituality, which he eventually gained by reincarnation. But the rabbis see some hints in the Megillah that is telling us that Achashverosh represents material world. How so? Well, at the very beginning, it will say that he decreed a feast, a banquet. Who can remember how long was the banquet at the beginning of the Megillah, the feast? Let's see who is the first typing it into the chat. Meanwhile, look what I have here. I have my coffee. Look what else I have here. Hamantashen. Dulce de leche hamantashen. Look at this. Pretty cool, eh? Sarah Bloomberg. No, it's Sarah Bloomberg. She won the mitzvah points. 180 days, which according to the rabbis is pretty much half a year. Why would he do a party that lasts half year? Because he represents only half of the reality. He has no access to the other half. But there is more. Let me show you here. When Esther comes to talk to Achashverosh and say, I have a favor to ask you, Listen to the answer of Ahasuerus. He says, on the second day, the king again asked Esther at the wine feast, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? Shall be granted to you. What is your request? Even to half the kingdom shall be fulfilled." Why only half kingdom? Why only half? Because that's what he controls. That actually not what he controls, that all he knows. He knows only half of the reality because he represents the material world. That's why everything is half about Ahasuerus. Everything is half. Half a year, half the kingdom. And you see, it doesn't say there, my kingdom. He doesn't say, I will give you half of my kingdom. He said, I will give you half of the kingdom. Little hints. And that is all he knows. Because that's what he represents, and that's another of my absolute favorite Midrashim. And the other one, as I mentioned before, I want to put it here, so if you are replaying this class, you can see the sources. When, yes, the party lasted 180 days. Okay? Now, there is another number. There is another number mentioned there, that it is 127. Remember, I said that he was in charge of 127 provinces. Remember that? I will show you here. He said it happens on the day of Ahasuerus, that Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Nubia. Yes, 127 provinces. Where did we hear that name before? In the Torah, the number 127. Who remembers? (127) is mentioned in the Torah. Another hint, Book of Genesis. No? Maybe? Perhaps? I will wait a few more seconds to see if somebody will type there where we heard the number 127 in the Torah. 127 animals. Sorry, Sarah Bloomberg. You lost the mitzvah point that you gained with the previous question. No, it's not 127. No, it's not the ark. It's not the ark. It's after the ark. Nope. Days of flood. Nope. Okay, I will show you the Midrash when this is explained. Rabbi Akiva was once sitting and expounding, and he saw that his disciples were dozing off. He wished to wake them up, so he said, "How did Esther merit to reign over 127 provinces?" The answer is that the Holy One, blessed it, he said, "Let Esther, who was the descendants of Sarah, who lived 127 years, come and reign over 127 provinces." Michael Legoff, yeah, Sarah, Abraham's wife, she lived 127 years. Remember? In the book of Genesis. So it's the same number. So here we have a connection, according to the rabbis, from Esther to Sarah. Another one here. Another connection for somebody who lived before. This is fascinating. And the clue here to connect the two is the number 127. Okay? So why would Esther merited it? By the way, Esther is never presented as a reincarnation of Sarah. Okay? She just said that she was like Sarah on her merits. That's a difference. So it says, Esther merited this because she conducted herself with modesty and righteousness, like Sarah. Okay, remember their connection with Sarah. Remember with Sarah, she also had to go and live with the king when she was with the king of Egypt. Remember, when they have to go there because it was a famine in Canaan, and the king took her because he thought that Sarah was actually Abraham's sister, not his wife. Remember that episode? So she was also in a court or in a palace. Lots of connections here, guys. So that's what happened. And then more comments about this. Rabbi Akiva was pointing out that for each one of Sarah's perfect years of service to Hashem, to God, her descendant Esther merited to rule over a province. Then each day there was worth a town, and each hour a district. If such tremendous reward is a direct outgrowth of serving Hashem, how it is possible for one to slip away precious moments during a Torah discourse? So this rabbi is explaining how it's possible that Rabbi Akiva, students, remember, was falling asleep. And why would Rabbi Akiva would bring the story of Esther and Sarah to wake them up? Okay, so this rabbi is explaining. So Rabbi Akiva sought to impress upon his audience the importance of every moment of life spent engaged in Torah study and the service of Hashem. For one cannot imagine the outstanding reward that one, or one's descendants, will receive for each and every moment involved in Torah study. Okay? Michael Legov, Abraham didn't tell the king that he wasn't married to Sarah. Correct. That's correct. And Karen, very good question. How is Mary a non-Jew, and in fact spending a night with him even more than they're married, meritorious? Well, it's interesting because the Midrash explained that Esther was so pure and righteous at the palace. Pure and righteous at the palace. She's also described as the loneliest and saddest character for this arranged marriage. Now, remember that living outside of the land of Israel, the marriage to a Jew and living like a Jew had a different connotation that we have it today. They didn't have the kind of conversion ceremonies that we have today and so forth. If you go and read the book of Ruth is a perfect example of that, right? When this Jewish family was living in the land of Moab, remember? Abimelech and his sons, they married Moabites, and the women, they didn't convert to Judaism to marry this man. How do we know that? Because eventually when Ruth came to Israel, at that point, she has to make a proclamation that she accepts the God of Israel. So there is some kind of historical reality that we are forgetting when we analyze what happened with Esther and the fact that she married a non-Jewish king. Okay? So, yeah. But other than that, it said that she always kept kosher at the palace. Can I prove that? No. As I mentioned, this is not factual. And it's all based on Midrashim. Now, another thing that I want to tell you about this Midrash is this commentary from Rashi first. Rashi says, Rabbi Akiva taught that Sarah's 120 years were all used without interruptions to serve God. Okay? Now it's interesting because listen to this question. One may wonder how it's possible that Sarah served God without interruption. In the same sense, Esther, without interruption. Did she not eat, sleep, and care for all the physical needs? In other words, she said, come on. She has to stop serving God and go eat. She has to stop serving God and go sleep at night. And she has to stop serving God and go to the toilet. Right? So, can you actually serve God by going to the toilet? Well, the rabbi said the answer is that while she surely took care of her physical needs, she did so to enhance her service of God. When one's physical activities are all directed towards the service of God, they too are acts of serving God. In other words, there is this concept of, it's called the constant mitzvot. I believe there are 6. 6 constant mitzvot that we have to do it all the time. There is a book about that. I read it once. I never bought it. It's a very interesting concept, the constant mitzvot. In other words, it's the goal of this midrash is to teach us that we have the potential, I guess, to live such life that everything we do is towards having energy to serve God, right? Because sometimes you have to take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't serve God. If you're weak, you can't think properly, then you cannot study Torah and so forth. Yeah, that's correct. Now, I have another one. And this will be the last one. And this is the most impressive one, because I mentioned before, the book of Esther sometimes is considered as containing some kind of prophecy. And it all starts from this verse here in chapter 9. Let's see what happened here. This is at the very end. They already got rid of Haman. They hanged him. They already hanged Haman's 10 sons. It's done. It's done. Okay? At this point of the Megillah, we're all celebrating. But there is a very weird request from Esther to the king. She says, "If it please your majesty," Esther replied, "let the Jews of Shushan in Shushan be permitted to act tomorrow, also as they did today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged." Which doesn't make any sense, because they were already hanged today. Why does she want to hang Haman's 10 sons tomorrow? You know what I mean? One explanation may be, okay, let's allow us to leave those bodies on display for one more day. Maybe that's what she meant. But the rabbis and in the Midrash, they analyze the word tomorrow differently. They say, our sages comment on the word tomorrow in Esther's request. And they say, there is a tomorrow that is now and a tomorrow which is later. In the sense that when Esther said, let me go back here, let it be permitted to act tomorrow as we did today, it doesn't mean tomorrow 24 hours later. It means tomorrow in the future. So let us God to act in the future, in a historical future, the way we are doing it today. And why is that? Listen to this Midrash, because this is fantastic. If we examine the... hold on. Before we do that. Now, you know what? Let's do it. If we examine the list of Haman's sons, 3 letters are written smaller. Okay? You can go to the Megillah and check it. Check it. Don't take my word for it. Go and check it. You need a kosher Megillah. You will see. It's in chapter 9 that we read actually the names of the 10 sons of Haman, right? 3 letters are written smaller, and they are the Taf of the name Parshandata, the Shin of Parmashta, and the Zayin of Vizata. Okay? Those 3 letters together form Taf, Shin, Zayin. The last 3 numbers of the Jewish year 5707, which corresponds to the secular year 1946, the year those 10 Nazi criminals were executed in Nuremberg. What about this Midrash? We are talking about the 10 sons of Haman. 10 Nazis were executed. Not only executed, they were hanged. You know that everybody was expecting death by firing squad. But nope. The decision was they have to be hanged. And there were 10 Nazis. In the year 5707, which is Tav Shin Zayin, the 3 letters that they are smaller, when we read the 10 names of the sons of Haman. Are you following this? This is pretty awesome. Let's read a little bit more here. The Nuremberg trials were a military tribunal, and thus the method of execution was usually by firing squad. The court, however, prescribed hanging. Esther's request, let Haman's 10 sons be hanged, echoes down the ages. Equally uncanny is that the date of the execution, October 16, 1946, fell on Hoshana Rabbah, 21 of Tishrei, the day on which God seals the verdict of Rosh Hashanah for the coming year. Are you following, guys? This is amazing. As the Megillah recounts, a decree that the kings had sealed cannot be rescinded. And thus Ahasuerus had to promulgate a second decree to allow the Jewish people to defend themselves. In other words, that the first decree was never nullified. Because this is what you have to understand. Yeah, Jerome, 11 people supposed to be hanged, but one committed suicide before that. Even that, so 10 people were hanged. So, but coming here, there is another Midrash that it says in the Megillat Esther, every time that it says the king, of course, at one level is talking about Ahasuerus, but you can read the entire Megillah again as the king is actually God at a different level. So when the king signed a decree saying that all the Jews could be eliminated, right? Remember that they said in Megillah, all the Jews could be eliminated. And then when Esther says to the king, okay, can you annul that law? And the king said, no, I cannot do that. It's the law. Once I write something, I cannot change my mind. But what can we do? Okay, what I can do is I cannot annul that law, but I can allow you to defend yourself every time somebody will try to destroy you. And that's been the history of the Jewish people ever since. Whew! This is amazing. And why that? Because they said that first decree was never, ever annulled. And there is even more. I don't know if you know this part of the story. Because one of the Nazis that was hanged that day, called Streicher, goes like this. As he reached the platform, Streicher cried out, "Now it goes to God." He was pushed the last 2 steps to the mortal spot beneath the hangman's rope. The rope that was being held back against a wooden rail by the hangman. Streicher was swung suddenly to face the witness and glared at them. Suddenly he screamed, "Purim Fest, 1946. True story. True story. He was actually this guy, he knew a lot about Judaism. He was obsessed with the Jews, and he was part of the big propaganda machine of the Nazi regime. So he knew everything, and he knew the parallel right away when he saw it. That's why before he died, his last words were Purim Fest 1946. Quite an amazing connection with the Megillah. And again, these are some of my favorite Midrashim of Purim. There are so many more. So I have to go through a huge editing process to be able to narrow down to us just a few for you. And there is another one that is actually very interesting. And there is a connection between the book of Esther and the story of Joseph. Remember Joseph? He was also kind of hidden. Remember that his brothers didn't recognize him. And then he told them, hey, Ani Yosef, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive? Remember that? And that happened during a banquet. Just like the story of Purim, when Esther told King Ahasuerus, I'm a Jew. During a banquet. Lots of things. Lots of connection with the Torah. Lots of connections with the Torah as well. And it's a beautiful book. And hopefully next year I will present to you even more Midrashim of Purim. But for now, all I had to say, thank you so much everyone for tuning in. Remember, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up. Share this video if you want. That will help the channel also, so more people will be connected with us. And if you missed part of the class, don't worry. It's going to be restreamed tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time, which is, we are already on daytime in Winnipeg. I don't know where you are from, if you still have that, but it's going to be Central Time but daytime. Okay, tonight at 8 p.m. Have a wonderful rest of Purim. Now go eat and drink, I guess. And hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.